I'm Patricia Morrison. I'm 68 years old, and I've learned that blood isn't thicker than water. It's just harder to clean off the floor when it spills. I gave my family a debt-free foundation, a paid-off education, and a lifetime of stability. But they handed me a lawsuit demanding I fund a lifestyle they didn't earn. They thought they were leaving behind a helpless, senile old woman who would sign anything to keep the peace. They didn't know I actually hold the patent to the Morrison thermal composite, a technology worth 50 times the house they tried to steal. By next Friday, they won't just be they will be defendants in a criminal courtroom, and I will be the one pressing charges. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. The brass internal gear of my vintage espresso maker had finally stripped. It was an Italian model from the 1960s, a piece of machinery built when things were meant to last. Unlike the modern world outside my window, I had the machine disassembled on my kitchen island, the parts laid out on a clean white towel in order of size. I was using a pair of fine-point tweezers to realign the catch spring. It was quiet work. It was precise work. It was the kind of work that kept my hands steady and my mind sharp. Since Bob passed away 5 years ago, the silence of my Tuesday morning was shattered, not by a knock, but by the sound of the front door being thrown open. The latch hit the wall with a dull thud that vibrated through the floorboards. I didn't jump. I didn't drop the spring. I just set the tweezers down and looked up. "Mom, we're here." The voice belonged to Derek, my son. It was a voice that always sounded like it was being projected for an audience, sharp and overly bright, like cheap fluorescent lighting. He swept into the kitchen, his expensive loafers clicking aggressively on the hardwood. He was wearing a new jacket, something navy and designer that probably cost more than my monthly utility bill. Trailing behind him was Jessica, my daughter. She was 42, but today she looked like a teenager who had been dragged to the principal's office. She was carrying a bottle of wine with a red ribbon tied around the neck. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She was looking at the disassembled espresso maker, at the floor, at the cabinets, anywhere but at me. "Hey Mom," Jessica mumbled. "Fixing things again. It's what I do," I said, my voice calm. "People break things. I fix them." "What are you doing here, Jessica? It's 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Shouldn't you be at the manufacturing plant?" Derek stepped between us before she could answer. He placed his designer messenger bag on the counter, pushing aside a neat stack of my engineering journals. "Oh, Patricia, don't be such a grump," he chirped, flashing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We took a personal day. We have news. Big news." "Open the wine, Jessica." Jessica set the bottle down. It wasn't the Pinot Noir I used to drink on special occasions with Bob. It was a blend, the kind of gift you buy when you want to look generous but don't want to spend the money. "I don't drink before noon, Derek," I said, "and I rarely drink at all these days. You know that. Well, you'll want to toast to this," he said. He pulled a glossy folder from his bag. It was thick. "We found it, Patricia. The forever home. It's up on Desert Vista Estates, gated community, 4 bedrooms, a view of the valley. It's perfect for us. It's perfect for the future." He let the word future hang there, implying grandchildren that didn't exist and likely never would. "Desert Vista Estates," I repeated. I knew the development. It was flashy, overpriced, and built on a slope that I knew for a fact had drainage issues in monsoon season. "That's an expensive zip code." "It's an investment," Jessica said quickly, reciting a line she had clearly been fed. "Real estate is the only safe place for money right now. Mom, we need to get into the market before we're priced out forever." I asked. "I thought you just refinanced your condo last year." Jessica flinched. Derek's smile tightened at the edges. "That was to consolidate some startup costs for my consulting business," Derek said, dismissing the debt with a wave of his manicured hand. "This is different. This is our legacy, and we want you to be a part of it." He slid the folder across the granite countertop. It stopped inches from my disassembled espresso maker gears. I wiped my hands on a rag to remove the trace amounts of machine oil and opened it. I expected to see a brochure, maybe some floor plans. Instead, I saw a standard mortgage application for First Desert Alliance Bank. It was fully filled out. Property value, $600,000. Down payment, $120,000. Primary borrower Patricia A.N. Morrison. I stared at my name, typed neatly in the box. I put my reading glasses on, taking my time, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. I read the income section. They had listed my pension. They had listed my social security. They had checked retired. I closed the folder. There seems to be a clerical error, I said, looking at Jessica. They put my name in the borrower's box. It's not an error, Mom, Jessica said, her voice rising in pitch. We talked to the broker. Because you're retired and have the paid-off house, your credit score is perfect. If we go on the loan, the rate jumps to points because of the consulting business debt. So you want me to co-sign? I said. No, Derek corrected me. Not co-sign. We want you to buy it. We'll pay the mortgage, of course. We just need your name on the title and the loan to secure the rate. It's just paper. Patricia, it helps us get the keys, and then we handle the monthly payments. It's zero risk to you. Zero risk. I looked at my daughter. She was sweating. I could see a bead of perspiration tracking down her temple. She knew exactly what they were asking. They were asking me to leverage my entire financial security, the home Bob and I had paid off 20 years ago, to back a loan for a house they couldn't afford. If you're paying the mortgage, I said, keeping my voice flat, then you should be able to qualify for the loan. If the bank won't lend you the money, Jessica, it's because the math doesn't work. And if the math doesn't work for the bank, why would it work for me? Because your family, Derek snapped. The sweetness cracked, revealing the desperation underneath. God, Patricia, why does everything have to be a math problem with you? Why does everything have to be an equation? We are talking about your daughter's happiness. We are talking about dignity. Dignity is paying your own bills, I said. I drove a 10-year-old car so Jessica could go to college without debt. That was my gift. That was my investment. I am not signing a $600,000 note. I pushed the folder back. Mom, please. Jessica stepped forward. She looked sick. We already put down the earnest money. $10,000. It's If we don't secure financing by Friday, we lose it. We lose the money. Then you better call the broker. I picked up my tweezers and tell him, you made a mistake. Derek grabbed the folder. His face wasn't charming anymore. It was twisted into a sneer. You selfish old woman, he hissed. You sit in this big empty house hoarding your pension and tinkering with trash while we struggle. Bob would never have done this. He would have helped us. Don't, I said. The single word came out like a gunshot. I stood up. I am 5'10". I may be 68, but I still have the frame of a woman who spent her life building jet turbines. Do not speak his name in this house to justify your greed. Get out. We're not leaving until you sign. Derek slammed his hand on the counter. Then you'll be leaving in handcuffs. I reached for the wall phone. I'm calling the sheriff. Derek stared at me, his chest heaving. He realized I wasn't bluffing. He grabbed Jessica by the sleeve of her jacket. Come on, he spat. She's useless. Let's go. They stormed out. The front door slammed again, shaking the house. I heard their car engine rev aggressively in the driveway, tires spinning on the gravel as they peeled out. I stood there for a long time. The silence came back, but it felt different now. It felt heavy. I looked at the cheap bottle of wine on the counter. I picked it up, walked to the sink, uncorked it, and poured the red liquid down the drain. It smelled like chemicals and bad decisions. 3 days passed. I didn't call them. They didn't call me. I spent the time finishing the espresso maker and organizing my workshop. I told myself it was just a temper tantrum. I told myself Jessica would cool off, realize the insanity of the request, and come back to apologize. I was wrong. On Friday afternoon, I walked down the long driveway to get the mail. The Arizona heat was dry. Clinging to my linen shirt, I opened the metal box and pulled out a stack of envelopes, a flyer for pool cleaning, a bill for the electricity, and a thin white envelope from First Desert Alliance Bank. My heart did a slow, heavy thud in my chest. I hadn't banked with First Desert in 30 years. Bob and I moved everything to a private trust credit union decades ago. I tore the envelope open right there in the heat. Dear Ms. Patricia E. Morrison, we regret to inform you that your application for a home equity line of credit in the amount of $25,000 has been declined due to discrepancies in income verification. A HELOC, a line of credit against my house. I hadn't applied for a loan. I had just refused a loan. I walked back up the driveway, my sandals crunching on the gravel. I didn't feel the heat anymore. I felt the heat rising in my neck, the specific, controlled burn of an engineer who discovers a critical system failure. They hadn't just asked, they had stolen. I went straight to my office. I dialed the fraud department number listed on the letter. I navigated the automated menus with a shaking finger, not from age, but from rage. Fraud department. This is Michael. My name is Patricia Morrison, I said. I am holding a rejection letter for a loan I never applied for. We went through the security protocols. Michael was efficient. He pulled up the file. Okay, Ms. Morrison, I see the application. It was submitted online on Tuesday evening at 8:45 p.m. Tuesday, 45 minutes after they left my kitchen. I need to know how they verified my identity, I said. They would need more than just my name. They had your social security number, date of birth, and they passed the security question. Michael said, what was the question? Mother's maiden name. I closed my eyes. Chen, I whispered. Yes, ma'am, that's the answer on file. There was only one person I had ever told that name to. Bob's family knew, of course, but they were all gone. I had told Jessica 5 years ago, the night of Bob's funeral. We were sitting on the porch, drinking the good wine. I was telling her stories about her grandmother, about how she came from Taiwan with nothing. I told her the name was Chen. She had filed that memory away. She hadn't listened as a daughter. She had listened as an opportunist. She had kept that name in her pocket like a spare key, waiting for the day she needed to break in. Flag it as fraud, I told Michael. Lock everything down. No one accesses my credit without a voice authorization from me personally. I'm doing that now, ma'am. I recommend you file a police report. I will, I said, but first, I have to find out what else they took. The police report was filed. The credit freeze was in place. I thought that was the end of the opening skirmish. I thought I had blocked their move. The following Monday, I found another envelope in my mailbox. This one wasn't from a bank. It had no return address. It was a plain manila envelope, the kind you buy at a drugstore. My name was scrawled on the front in block letters with a thick black marker. I opened it in the kitchen. Inside was a single sheet of notebook paper and a photograph. The photograph was grainy. It showed Jessica walking to her car in the parking lot of the manufacturing plant. It was taken from a distance, through a telephoto lens, or maybe from another car. There was a red circle drawn around her head. The note was written in the same jagged, aggressive block print. Your daughter owes us. She stopped paying. 48 hours to drop 5 OK at Desert Storage Center, Locker 404, or the accident happens. I stared at the note. My stomach turned over. This wasn't bank fraud. This was a death threat. Suddenly, the desperation in the kitchen made sense. The $600,000 house, the frantic demand for the loan. Maybe it wasn't just greed. Maybe Jessica was in trouble. Maybe she had borrowed money from the wrong people, loan sharks, gamblers, and the house was a way to launder the money to pay them back. The engineer in me tried to analyze the data. $50,000. It was a specific number. I grabbed my keys. My anger evaporated, replaced by a cold pit of fear. She was a thief. Yes. She was a disappointment. Yes. But she was my daughter. And if someone was hunting her, I had to intervene. I didn't call Jessica. If her phone was tapped, or if she was being watched, it could trigger the accident. I looked at the note again. Old Mill, Locker 404. Desert Storage Center was a defunct industrial yard on the edge of town. It had been turned into a self-storage facility years ago. It was isolated, perfect for a drop. I went to my safe in the floor of the closet. I spun the dial. Inside, next to the blueprints for the Morrison thermal composite, was a stack of cash. Emergency funds. I counted out $10,000. It wasn't 50, but it was enough to buy time, enough to talk to these people. I drove my SUV to Desert Storage Center. I parked across the street behind a dense row of mesquite trees. I had my binoculars. I wasn't going to just drop the money blindly. I wanted to see who picked it up. I wanted to see the face of the threat. I waited. Hours passed. The sun went down. The storage facility was lit by flickering sodium lights. At 9:15 p.m., a car pulled in. It wasn't a black SUV with tinted windows. It wasn't a muscle car. It was a silver Honda Civic. I raised the binoculars. I read the license plate, AZ449LTY. I recognized the car. It belonged to Derek's mother, a sweet woman who lived in a nursing home 2 towns over. Derek drove it when his own luxury sedan was in the shop. The car stopped by the lockers. The driver's door opened. Derek stepped out. He was wearing a hoodie pulled up over his head, sunglasses on despite the darkness. He looked around nervously. He walked to Locker 404. He opened it with a key he took from his pocket. He checked inside. Finding it empty, he slammed it shut, kicked the metal door in frustration, and pulled out his phone. He dialed. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. I didn't answer. I watched through the binoculars as he left a voicemail. gesturing angrily at the empty locker. Pick up the money, I whispered to myself. He wasn't picking up money for a shark. He was the shark. The threat was a fabrication, a false lead designed to panic me. They knew if I thought Jessica's life was in danger, I would pay. They knew I was a mother first and a financier second. They were weaponizing my protective instinct against me. I watched him get back in the car and drive away. I sat in my SUV for a long time. The fear in my gut hardened. It cooled and solidified into something that felt like steel. They weren't just greedy. They were sociopathic. They were willing to simulate a hit on my daughter to extort me. I started the truck. I wasn't going to call the police about the note. Not yet. I had a war to plan. 2 days later, I was ready for the next wave. I knew it was coming. The loan failed. The extortion failed. They would escalate. At 11 a.m., a car with the seal of the state of Arizona on the door pulled into my driveway. A man stepped out. He was young, severe, holding a clipboard like a weapon. I opened the door before he knocked. Ms. Patricia Morrison. Yes. I'm Mr. Vincent, Adult Protective Services. We received a referral concerning your welfare. Let me guess, I said, standing in the doorway, blocking his entry. The report says, I'm confused. It says I'm forgetting things. It says I'm paranoid and living in squalor. Mr. Vincent blinked. He looked at his paperwork. It lists concerns regarding self-neglect and cognitive decline. It mentions a gas stove being left on. I have an electric stove, I said. Induction cooktop. Installed it myself 3 years ago. It has an auto shut-off safety feature. Whoever filed that report has never been inside my kitchen. Mr. Vincent looked at me. He saw a woman who was groomed, dressed in a clean-pressed blouse, standing in a doorway that was freshly painted. I still need to come in. Ms. Morrison, it's protocol. Come in. I stepped aside, inspect the fridge, check the medicine cabinet, count the dust bunnies. He walked through my house. He saw the organized workshop. He saw the clean linens. He saw the fridge stocked with fresh vegetables and lean protein. He saw the vitamin organizer on the counter, full for the week. He sat down at my kitchen table. Ms. Morrison, your living conditions are impeccable, better than most people half your age. But the report also alleges paranoia. It says you believe your family is conspiring to steal from you. Is it paranoia if it's true? I asked. I walked to the counter and picked up the folder I had prepared. I slid it across to him. This is a copy of a police report filed last Friday regarding a fraudulent loan application submitted in my name. This is the IP address log from the bank, which traces back to my daughter's home Wi-Fi. This is a photo I took 2 nights ago of my son-in-law, checking a Dropbox for a fake ransom payment he tried to extort from me. Mr. Vincent opened the folder. His eyes widened. The people who filed this report, I said, leaning forward, are the same people who committed these crimes. They filed this report because I caught them. They are trying to discredit me before I can press charges. They want a conservatorship so they can control the assets they are currently trying to steal. Mr. Vincent closed the folder. He took a deep breath. Ms. Morrison, in 10 years of doing this, I have never seen a rebuttal file this organized. I'm an engineer, Mr. Vincent. I believe in data. However, he said, tapping his pen, because the allegation involves cognitive decline, specifically anosognosia, the inability to recognize one's own illness, I cannot just close the case on your word. The court will require an independent evaluation. Good, I said. Schedule it. I want the toughest psychiatrist you have. I want the full battery. ICU, memory, logic, spatial reasoning. Test me. Double quotes. Dr. Helena Eris was a woman who looked like she enjoyed finding flaws in people. She had a monotone voice and a sterile office in downtown Phoenix. Draw a clock face, she said. Set the time to 11. I drew a perfect circle. I marked the integers. I drew the hands. Now, she said, subtract 7 from 100 and keep going. 93, 86, 79, 72, 65, 58. I rattled them off faster than she could write them down. Interpret this proverb for me. People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. It means those who are vulnerable to criticism should not criticize others, I said. It refers to hypocrisy. For example, a daughter suing her mother for incompetence while being too incompetent to manage her own household budget. Dr. Eris paused. She looked over her glasses. You seem angry, Ms. Morrison. I am angry, I said. I am angry that my intelligence is being insulted by a test designed for people who can't remember their own names. Give me something real. Give me a complex problem. Dr. Aris sighed. She pulled a logic puzzle from a drawer. It was a spatial reasoning test, usually reserved for high-level executive function assessment. Arrange these shapes to fit the pattern, she said, starting a stopwatch. I solved it in 12 seconds. Next, I said by the end of the hour. Dr. Aris had put down her clipboard. Ms. Morrison, she said, you are testing in the 99th percentile for your age group. In fact, your processing speed is higher than mine. I'm going to recommend the immediate dismissal of the petition. Don't, I said. Dr. Aris frowned. Excuse me, don't send the report yet. Or rather, send a preliminary note saying the evaluation is complete, but hold the full results until the court hearing next week. Why? Because, I said, standing up and buttoning my jacket. If they know I passed, they'll withdraw the lawsuit and try something else. I need them in that courtroom. I need them, under oath. I need them to commit. I walked out of the doctor's office, feeling a grim sense of satisfaction. I headed for the parking garage. My footsteps echoed on the concrete. I heard footsteps behind me, fast ones. I stopped and turned, my hand instinctively going to the heavy flashlight I kept in my purse. A woman stopped 10 feet away. She was panting. She was young, maybe 30, wearing a mechanic's jumpsuit with the logo of the manufacturing company where Jessica worked. Ms. Morrison, she asked. Who are you? I'm Sarah Winters. I worked with Jessica. Under her, actually. I gripped the flashlight. Was this another thug? Another fake threat? What do you want, Sarah? I heard about the lawsuit, Sarah said. Small town. Everyone talks. They say Jessica is suing you for losing your mind. That's the story. It's a lie, Sarah said. She looked around the empty garage. Look, I shouldn't be here. If Jessica sees me talking to you, Jessica is a coward, I said. Talk. I got fired 3 months ago, Sarah said. Termination for cause. Inventory theft. They said I was stealing parts and selling them online.
Did you?
No, that's just it. I was the inventory manager. I started noticing discrepancies. Expensive parts, hydraulics, control unit. They were being marked as damaged and written off, but they weren't in the scrap bin. Jessica, I said. She was the shift supervisor. She signed off on the scrap logs. When I brought it to her, she told me to drop it. 2 days later, security found a missing hydraulic pump in the trunk of my car. She planted it. She framed you. Sarah reached into her jumpsuit pocket. She pulled out a USB drive. I made a backup, she said. Before they walked me out, I copied the digital scrap logs and the emails Jessica sent from her work account. She wasn't just stealing parts. She was embezzling from the expense account to falsifying travel receipts, buying jewelry, and listing it as client gifts. I looked at the small silver drive. This was the smoking gun. This was the unexpected ally I didn't know I needed. Why give this to me? I asked. Why not the police? I tried, Sarah said bitterly. It's my word against hers. She's the boss. I'm the one with the stolen pump in my trunk. But if you're going to court, if you can use this to destroy her credibility, maybe I can get my name back. I took the drive. It felt heavy in my hand, heavier than the metal it was made of. You'll get your name back, Sarah, I promised. And you'll get your job back. I'm going to make sure of it. Margaret Chen's office was on the 40th floor of the tallest building in Denver. Maggie and I had been friends since engineering school. She had gone into law. I had gone into aerospace. She was the only person on earth who knew about the trust. I sat in her leather chair, the USB drive and the threat photos laid out on her mahogany desk. Maggie picked up the photo of Derek at the Dropbox. She shook her head, a sad smile on her face. They are remarkably bad at being criminals, Pat. They're desperate, I said. Desperation makes people sloppy, but it also makes them dangerous. We have enough here to send them to prison for 10 years, Maggie said. Extortion, fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. We don't even need the hearing. No, I said, we need the hearing. Pat, Maggie took off her glasses. Why put yourself through this? Just hand it to the DA because they dragged Bob into it, I said. My voice broke for the first time. They used his name. They claimed this is what he would have wanted. I need to clear the record. I need to say it in public. And I need to trigger the clause. Maggie looked at the large, blue-bound ledger on the corner of her desk. The Morrison Family Trust. Section 4, Article B. Maggie murmured. The moral character clause. If I just have them arrested, I said. They can claim they were misunderstood victims, but if the judge rules on the clause, if the judge declares them morally bankrupt in open court, then they lose the inheritance forever. Even if I die tomorrow, they never get a dime. Maggie nodded. She opened the ledger. You realize this means revealing the patent, she said, the $52 million, the secret you kept for 30 years to keep Jessica normal. Jessica isn't normal, I said. She's a predator, and it's time she learned that the prey has teeth. The courtroom in Maricopa County smelled of floor wax and old wood. It was Wednesday. The hearing for Morrison versus Morrison was the first item on the docket. Derek and Jessica were sitting at the plaintiff's table. Derek was dressed in black, a modest suit I had never seen him wear. He had a handkerchief in his hand. He was dabbing Jessica's eyes before the judge had even entered. Jessica looked pale. She was staring at her hands. I sat next to Maggie. I wore my best suit, the charcoal wool one I wore to Bob's funeral. I didn't look at them. I looked at the judge, the Honorable Thomas Bradford. He was a man with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. All rise. The bailiff announced the case. Mr. Sterling, their lawyer, a man with a shiny suit and a smile that looked like it was purchased on installment, stood up. Your Honor, Sterling began, his voice dripping with faux sympathy. This is a tragedy, a family tragedy. My clients are here not out of greed, but out of love. They are seeking to protect a mother who can no longer protect herself. He called Derek to the stand. Derek walked up slowly, clutching his handkerchief. He swore the oath. Mr. Morrison, Sterling asked, tell us about Patricia. She was a wonderful woman, Derek sniffed. But after Bob died, she changed. She started forgetting things. She became aggressive. Last week she threatened us. She accused us of stealing. She said crazy things about loan sharks and spies. He looked at me, his eyes wet with fake tears. We just want her to be safe, he whispered. We want to manage her assets so she doesn't lose everything. She has a small pension, and we just want to make sure it lasts. And the house? Sterling asked. The house is too much for her, he said. We want to move her to a facility where she can get care. We would take over the house too, to keep it in the family. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Sterling sat down, looking smug. Cross-examined. The judge asked, but Maggie stood up. She didn't walk to the podium. She stood by her chair. No questions for this witness, Your Honor. We will save our questions for Ms. Morrison. Derek looked confused as he stepped down. He had rehearsed his answers, and we hadn't asked any. Call Jessica Morrison, Maggie said. Jessica walked to the stand. She looked like a woman walking to the gallows. She sat down. Ms. Morrison, Maggie began, her voice pleasant. You agree with your husband's testimony? You believe your mother is paranoid? Yes, Jessica said, her voice barely a whisper. She imagines threats that aren't there. Yes, for example, Maggie picked up a piece of paper. She believes someone sent her a letter threatening your life if she didn't pay $50,000. That sounds like a paranoid delusion, doesn't it? Yes, Jessica stammered. I never saw any letter. And yet, Maggie said, walking to the evidence table, here is the letter. She held up the manila envelope. And here, Maggie continued, her voice hardening, is a series of photographs taken by a private investigator your mother hired, showing your husband, Derek Morrison, visiting the drop location specified in this delusional letter. The courtroom went silent. Derek froze at the table. Objection. Sterling yelled. Ambush. Overruled, Judge Bradford said, leaning forward. This goes to credibility. Ms. Morrison, Maggie continued, did you know your husband was the loan shark threatening your life? I know. Jessica looked at Derek. His face was a mask of terror. Let's move on, Maggie said. You claim you want to manage your mother's finances because she is incompetent. You, however, are a financial professional, a manager at Apex Manufacturing. Yes, Jessica said, sitting up straighter. I am. Were you? Maggie asked. She picked up the USB drive and a stack of printed emails. We have here a sworn affidavit from Ms. Sarah Winters, your former inventory manager, and we have digital logs proving that on May 4th, you falsified 12 separate expense reports. You were fired, Ms. Morrison. You haven't had a job in 3 months. Jessica turned gray. You are unemployed. You are facing a lawsuit from your former employer for embezzlement, and you are currently $80,000 in debt. Maggie slammed the papers down on the railing. You aren't here to protect your mother's pension, Ms. Morrison. You are here to loot it. You are drowning, and you are trying to use your mother as a life raft. It's not true, Jessica shouted, standing up. She has money. She has a paid-off house. She's hoarding it while we starve. Sit down, Judge Bradford barked. She promised us, Jessica yelled, pointing at me. She promised Dad she would take care of us. That, Maggie said, is the final point. Maggie walked back to our table. She picked up the blue ledger. She carried it to the judge's bench with both hands, as if it were a holy text. Your Honor, Maggie said, the plaintiffs operate under the assumption that my client is a woman of modest means, a pensioner with a house. Is that not the case? Judge Bradford asked, opening the book. No, Your Honor, my client is the inventor of the Morrison thermal composite, the primary heat-shielding alloy used in every commercial jet engine manufactured since 1995. Derek's head snapped up, his eyes widened. The assets in the Morrison Family Trust, Maggie continued, currently total $52 million. The number hung in the air like smoke. $52 million. Derek made a sound. It was a gasp that turned into a moan. He looked at the ledger with a hunger that was terrifying to witness. He wasn't looking at me. He wasn't looking at Jessica. He was looking at the money. However, Maggie said, raising her voice, the trust has a clause, Section 4, Article B, the Moral Character Clause. Judge Bradford read it. He nodded slowly. The beneficiary, he read aloud, must demonstrate the highest standard of ethical conduct and financial responsibility. Any evidence of criminal activity, fraud, or deceit against the family shall result in immediate and permanent disinheritance. Maggie turned to Jessica. By filing this fraudulent lawsuit, Maggie said, by attempting to extort your mother with a fake death threat, by embezzling from your employer, you haven't just lost this case, Jessica. You have triggered the clause. You have legally proven, Maggie finished, that you are unfit to inherit a single dime. Jessica sank back into the witness chair. She looked small. She looked broken. But it wasn't the break of a woman who feels remorse. It was the break of a woman who realizes the lottery ticket she stole was a loser. Derek was the one who exploded. You can't, he shrieked, standing up. It's $52 million. It's ours. She's the daughter. You can't keep it from us. Mr. Morrison, sit down, or I will have you removed, Judge Bradford warned. She lied. Derek pointed a shaking finger at me. She pretended to be poor. She tricked us. I didn't trick you, I said. I didn't stand up. I spoke from my chair, my voice calm and clear. I tested you, and you failed. Judge Bradford banged his gavel. This court finds the petition for conservatorship to be baseless and filed in bad faith, he declared. Based on the evidence of extortion and fraud presented by the defense, I am referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Case dismissed. He looked at Jessica. And Ms. Morrison, if I were you, I wouldn't worry about the inheritance. I'd worry about the sentencing guidelines for elder abuse and grand larceny. Crack. The gavel fell. I walked out of the courtroom alone. I didn't look back at the sobbing figure of my daughter or the screaming figure of her husband being restrained by the bailiff. I walked out into the bright, dry sunshine of the Arizona afternoon. I sold the house on the hill. It was too big for one woman, and it held too many ghosts. I moved to Santa Fe. I bought a condo in the hills. It has a balcony that overlooks the valley. The air smells of pinyon and sage. I'm sitting here now. It's morning. The sun is hitting the mountains, turning them into shades of amber and rose. I have a new espresso machine. It's a modern one, Italian, with a pressure gauge and a steam wand. It works perfectly. I sip the espresso. It's strong. My phone buzzes. It's an email from Maggie. Subject, update. Pat, the plea deal is signed. Jessica gets 3 years. Derek gets 5. They pinned the extortion note on him. Sarah got her job back. She's the new regional manager. Also, the university approved the scholarship fund. The Robert Morrison Engineering Grant is live. I put the phone down. I lost my daughter. I know that, but in truth, I lost her a long time ago. I just didn't want to admit it until she forced my hand. I look out at the valley. The morning light spills across the landscape, clean and endless. I protected the legacy. I honored Bob. I take another sip of espresso. For the first time in years, the silence in my house doesn't feel empty. It feels like peace. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.